We are joined by financial expert Peter Komolafe, who is here to inform us about improving our credit score. Before we get to you, Peter, Jeff, have you had any problems with this?
I've got a friend who might have had a problem. His friend, he works in comedy, so I might ask, once we get into the chat, I might ask a question on behalf of that
no judgment here, Jeff. We're open to all questions.
I'll let my friend know.
How about you, Vicky?
No, but I was completely ignorant to the fact that you actually had to borrow money. I know you're going to demystify this later, but to borrow money and then prove that you can pay it back. So I actually thought when I was a student, and aside from like the student loan, when it came to buying like my first house, I was like, oh wow, I must have an amazing credit score. I haven't got any debt, I haven't borrowed. And my husband's like, yeah, you know, you need to prove yourself. That was a great day of shopping for me. That was awesome.
Get that credit card.
Hit Westfield, off I went.
Peter, let's take it back to basics. You know, in really simple terms, what is a credit score?
So the way I like to describe a credit score is it's essentially a scorecard. So when you're in school, you've got a scorecard. If you did really well at exams, you get a good mark. Same thing with a credit score. It is essentially a score of how well you do when you conduct yourself around your finances, specifically when it comes to borrowing, to things like credit cards, personal loans, credit, essentially. So a good score means that you conduct yourself really well. If you have certain things like missed payments, then it will reduce your score slightly.
OK, so how do you find out what your credit score actually is?
OK, so there are lots of companies out there. So you have three major credit score agencies. You've got Equifax, Experian and TransUnion. I like to use an app called ClearScore. Okay. And all you basically do is you just sign up to it, put in all your details. You have to go through an ID verification. And they basically pull all your data together for you.
Is this a free service?
It's a free one as well, which is good.
And all the ones you listed, they're free, so you don't...
Most of them are free, yes.
Yeah, so you just sign up online and...
That's right.
You can do it straight
you said an app, but you can do that just on a website as well?
Yeah, you can do it on a desktop as well. They've all got they fit on an app and they're also on the website as well. So if you don't have phones or you prefer to look at things on your desktop, you can use those to sign up.
Bank details and a lot of info to supply.
You do. I mean, so essentially these companies have to tie up you with your reference, with your score. So you have to go through ID. So you need to give them, you know, some of your bank details, where you've been, that kind of stuff, ID, addresses, so they can actually validate who you are and tie it to the right record.
But you can trust these websites, you can put those details in.
They are big companies, very large companies. They're regulated as well, so they can be trusted with your data. OK,
let's find out what you guys are wanting to ask at home. Elaine, have you got a question for Peter?
Well, it's not really a question. It's just telling people that my son-in-law had just passed his test, his driving test, and he wanted to get his first car. So he went to go and have a look round, and he found the car he liked. So the salesman tried to get him credit, and he couldn't get it. But he had never had a mortgage. He just sort of left school and college at the time. So he had absolutely nothing. So the salesman tried lots of different firms. No one would touch him. So he ended up, he said, go on the electoral register. He says, you're not on it. And he said, well, I'm not bothered, really. He says, yeah, go on it and it'll help. So he did, and it took 2 to 3 weeks for him to get registered. And he got the credit and everything. It was amazing.
Quite a simple fix then. Is that
it is, yeah. This is the weird thing about credit scores, right? It's almost like someone saying you need experience to get a job, but you haven't got any experience, so therefore you can't get the job. And with a credit score, you need to demonstrate that you can pay back your debt, so credit cards, those kind of things. So you need credit application, so you need a facility of some kind that you can pay back to demonstrate that you can. But you kind of stole my thunder there, Elaine, because yes, going on the electoral roll is a very quick win in terms of improving your credit score very quickly. And the way I explain this is just think about it from a lender's point of view. They just want to know that you live in an address and you have a record living somewhere, in opposed to just being someone that may possibly abscond when they give you a loan for £2,000, for example.
OK, so what do you get if you have a good credit score? What's the point of trying to aim for a high credit score?
OK, so the whole point of a good credit score is that you get rewarded. So remember, it is a record of you paying back facilities like overdrafts, credit cards, personal loans, those kind of things. So that track record essentially means that you're credit worthy, which in exchange for that, you get better rates. So you might apply for a car finance, for example, deal in this example, as Elaine was explaining, and in opposed to paying something like maybe 10.9, you might get offered a 7.9% rate. So the rate of interest is better, which means that the interest that you pay on that debt will be less. So it puts more money in your pocket effectively.
Does that help with mortgages as well?
100% on mortgages.
That feels like the big one.
Yes.
To get
Could I ask that question on behalf of my friend? Say somebody went to a small claims court with an unlosable case and somehow lost it, and then had a CCJ, a county court judgment against them, but literally paid it the following day. How much? There's online. It sort of says that if you pay immediately, it might not affect your credit score. Is that accurate?
Right. Okay. So if you pay off a CCJ immediately, so if you do it typically within 30 days, you can actually apply for the court for it to be taken off. But in most cases, if you have a CCJ and a number of other things like individual voluntary arrangements, IVAs, they will stay on your record for 5 to 6 years.
And that can have quite a detrimental
That has a
effect.
big impact on you, especially if you're younger, you take out a debt facility that you don't quite pay back, and then at one point you want to start getting on the property ladder for a mortgage, that can have a really negative impact. So it's really, really important to pay attention to the detail.
Has your friend suffered from this, Jeff?
I'm going to let him know. I think it was in 2019.
Okay.
So yeah, that's good news for me. Him.
Okay, so if you do notice that something's incorrect on your credit score, what can you go and do?
So you can put things like notice of corrections on your credit score. So I had to do this many, many years ago. I went from one phone provider to another and paid my last bill, but they didn't cancel the direct debit in time. So I didn't make the payment. It was a missed payment. So what I did is a notice of correction. It's basically just a note on your credit file to say, look, there is a missed payment. This is the circumstances.
And can you just do that through the app that you recommended?
You can do it via the agencies. There is actually a process that you need to go through. So you need to speak to the provider, whoever it is that put that note on there, and the agencies. I actually explain this in my book because I've got an entire chapter on credit scores. There's a process to go through, but you can put a notice of correction on.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so if you do have not a great credit score, what can you do to try and get it back up again?
Okay, so we've already covered one, Elaine, thank you. Electoral roll, really quick win. And again, it's just about making sure that they can see that you're visible at a particular address. So get registered on that immediately. It will take 2 to 3 weeks, but it will give you a really, really good boost. The other thing is, if you do have, personal loans, car finance, mortgages, for example, please just make sure that you don't have any missed or late payments. So what I generally say to people is try and automate, or at least maybe for your credit card, because that's one that people often get tripped up on. Pay it via direct debit. So you don't have to think about it, it's automatically done.
Yep.
Those would be the 2 main things really to be mindful of.
So
and also
there.
on here is when you're looking at how you use credit. So for example, where a lot of people get caught up is they might have a credit card with £1,000 on it. The credit agencies don't necessarily like it when you're at the top of your limit, because it suggests that maybe you're struggling from a financial point of view. So there's something called credit utilization. 50% is probably the sweet spot. So if you have a credit card of £1,000, £500 is the max limit that you really want to have. And if you want to do something really, really good for your credit score, spend it on your credit card and pay it off every single month in full. That will really help you ramp up.
How about your overdraft then with like your debit, whatever your account? Would that also have implications if you're like over your overdraft? Asking for a friend as well.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah, I mean, look, your overdraft is connected to your account, essentially. So it's very different to things like a credit card, for example. But all of that does count into it. If you're over your overdraft limit, at the top of your overdraft limit, what it suggests is maybe you're struggling financially. So trying to keep everything within a reasonable limit as much as you possibly can is very, very important.
Why aren't we taught any of this at school, at uni? Why are we
No, you always seem to get
Why is today the school day?
In fairness, I was a teacher and we could have told teenagers this, but the idea that they would be receptive, they go, no, tell me more about credit scores and stuff. It was hard enough just to get them through their GCSEs. So I agree there needs to be some
I
sort of...
think kids now, though, are really savvy and want to earn money and save money and spend money because of all the pressures of social.
My son is 7.5. He knows about mortgages already. I'm teaching him the ways of the financial Jedi.
That's a good start.
My kids are already working already and earning money.
Let's see what you guys have been saying on social media. Wolf on Facebook says, why do you have to be in debt to have a good credit score? Makes no sense.
I know. It's one of those things that is... I mean, I've had a 15-year career, 18 years now. in financial services, and I spent a long time in retail banking, working with customers, and it never made sense to me. Like I said, it's one of those things where you want to apply for a job, but you need experience for the job, but you can't get experience until you get the job. It's just so weird of a structure. What doesn't make sense is
if you've got a good balance on your account, then you're showing that, yeah, I can afford this car, but you've not shown that you can pay anything back if you hit sort of adversity, let's say financially, which can happen. Pandemic, we saw that. You can lose your job, you can go from hero to zero. So I suppose it's the only way to show it, to test, look, I will pay back. And even then, it's probably not that strong a test, because there's people that are borrowing that can't.
The way I view it is it's a game. You just got to play the game,
Exactly. It doesn't make sense, but just play by the rules to get there. Let's see what else you've been saying on Facebook. So Peter says, I get my credit score shown on my banking app, and it's gone down by 5 points, then 15 points in the past 18 months, despite nothing changing in my life. Why is that? That's annoying. Why is that?
There are various reasons, and it's almost an unanswerable question, but there are varying reasons why that might happen. So they're in the background. So, for example, you've got your score, but your score is derived from your report. So something may have changed on your report. So it could be that they're tracking your balances. So, for example, if the interest payment on one of your loans goes up and the balance goes up, it might be something like that. Very, very small things. The great thing about the app like ClearScore that I use is that it tells you
the reason why. Okay, so maybe have a little look
gives you nudges as well.
On that. Amanda, have you got a question for Peter?
Well, it's not because, I mean, I actually did end up having a DRO. I got myself into a bit of trouble, which actually I believe was a good thing for myself. But I'm actually doing rather well now. I'm building it up. I managed to get a credit card, but I think I just think we all get in a situation, and the thing I would say is really just get help as soon as possible rather than wait like I did.
Yeah, that's a really,
100%.
really lovely point. And do you wish you got taught this kind of stuff in school?
Well, we did a little bit, but it was more in the way of economics. But I do think it is a good idea for school to teach children to how to do things like this. Personally, I mean, I was lucky enough to teach my children that, and they're even better than me at budgeting. So yeah, I think it should be taught in schools.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for sharing that. Peter, you mentioned, these things that can be going on in the background as they're checking. Are there specific unexpected things that could affect your credit score that we may not be thinking about?
Well, I think one of the things that I think people need to be very, very aware of is, again, thinking about this from the view of a lender, the credit score kind of gives them an indication of what your finances might look like. So things like buy now, pay later, if you're using that excessively, suggests that maybe you have really poor money management. So be mindful of that. Things like better apps or payday loans, they don't like those things at all. So it's really important. I know it can be very attractive to use buy now, pay later, but really think about it.
Don't maybe overuse them.
Be
careful
as well on stuff like that. So.
Emma, hi, thank you for calling in. Good afternoon. Have you got a question for Peter?
Yeah, I have. I would like to ask, I had a Visa and a MasterCard in my younger life, and I used to pay everything in full on time. And I got to the stage where I didn't need them anymore because I was coping financially. And then later on, I wanted to get a new MasterCard, Visa card from my bank and building society to travel again. And I was refused because of my credit score. I went to ClearScore, and I've got the most atrocious credit score for some reason. I just don't understand why.
Yeah. That's an unusual situation. If you've had one before that you've been using and you've paid it off, with ClearScore, when you go into your report, it gives you an indication of what's working well for you. And that's what I'll suggest probably your first point to go and actually have a look at. So I think there are 12 indicators, if my memory serves me correctly, and it will tell you what is working in your favour and what isn't. And the great thing about ClearScore as well is it will tell you what you need to do to fix those things. So if your score is low, go and check the report part in ClearScore and see what the indicators are saying, because you'll get some guidance there on what to actually fix.
Good luck with that, Emma. Thank you for calling in, and thank you for Peter for giving your advice on what can feel like the dark arts of trying to improve your credit score.
Indeed.
OK, after the break...